Hey everyone, welcome back to Love and Golf, a podcast about our romantic, passionate, and sometimes twisted love affair with the game and the valuable lessons it's given us and what we give back to it. If you've been in or around the golf industry for the past few years, it's no surprise that the industry has seen an influx, like a mass influx of content creators and influencers. Now, I have no problem with this, like zero. The attention it puts on the game, thus introducing it to new audiences, is terrific. But, and here's my but, I do have a small issue with those who are inauthentic and don't appreciate the game and its magic. They're simply using golf and its popularity for clicks. My next guest, guys, is the complete opposite of that. He's worked with some of the biggest names in golf like Malbon, Wilson Golf, LA Golf, Students. He's even inside the ropes at some of the most prestigious golf tournaments making content. Ube, or you may know him as @UbeWolf, is one of the most authentic, genuine, and talented content creators I've met and had the pleasure of working with. His eye for creativity, his cinematography, photography, and storytelling is just incredible. He and I met last year online, like a lot of people do. But the second I saw him and his work, I knew this dude was going places, and I just had to be along for the ride and just watch him. So, in this episode, I'm excited to share his love affair with golf, where he sees the future of content marketing and his origin stories, all in the hopes it may inspire you. So, my dude Ube, welcome to Love and Golf.
Yo, what is up, Mike? Thanks for the intro. Too many kind words. Too many kind words. Thank you for having me,
Brother. I'm gonna apologize in advance because I'm getting over a cold. So if I'm coughing, I'm gonna try and mute myself in time or clearing my voice. So you guys bear with me. But you and I, dude, we've been friends for a year now ish, and we tried to get this laid down. You've been traveling, I've been traveling, and just schedules haven't aligned. So I'm just glad we finally found an hour to just throw this down, get into some of your story because, bro, I'm a huge fan. Guys, just for some backstory here, I'm not bullshitting you when I say this. I literally remember seeing the Euphoria little Nike golf thing you made. There was like a little reel, probably 15 seconds. And the second I saw it, I was like, dude, the creativity just to put that online. And I was like, wow, like this. And then you did a few other things I saw, and you did an interview, I think, with Malbon or with the squad or something. I was like, this guy is going to the moon because I think the not to get too far ahead of ourselves here, guys. I'm obsessed in learning and obsessed in content creation because I think content is the biggest form of marketing we can do today. Any brand can do. So I definitely want to get into that, your story, but I was going that like you're just an incredible talent. You just have so much talent, and I'm happy to call you friend, and I'm blessed. And before we get into all the learning lessons and what people can do to make better content, or if you're a brand out there and you want to make good content, let's start from point zero. Like, where was your infection point with golf? Where was the first time? And guys, I'm going to call him Patrick sometimes because that's how I know him too. But Ube, when was the first time you had that moment that you met golf, that muse, and you fell in love with it?
So I mean, rewind back in time, like many others. There's a guy named Tiger Woods. He ended up being pretty decent at golf, and it kind of just changed the perspective, right? I think even nowadays, the sentiment is that golf used to be this old, stodgy type of game where only a certain people had access and only certain people played. But I think Tiger, for me, was one that brought the game in a different light as a person of color and just showed that, like many other sports, diversity inclusion is one that others can play. So I think that probably resonates with other folks that have picked up the game. From that point, I remember asking my dad if we could go to the golf course, and we picked up I think it was a Dunlop driver. We went and hit range balls. Had no idea if they were good or bad, and have no idea if they were good shots. But I think in those moments, we, one, connected over the game, and two, it kind of reinfected and brought more life to what a new sport for me could be like. I grew up playing basketball, football, baseball, kind of your typical sports. And I think from that point in time, I learned to love golf. And I also became reinfected in the game just before COVID. I think after high school playing, the rates to play and the access for golf were very different between being a junior and being an adult. It costs a proportionate amount to play as a junior than it does to when you become over 17 or 18. So because of that access, I really didn't play much. Then just before COVID came along, seeing the golf clubs in the corner and started going out to the range and kind of refound that love for the game. And now that I play and create things along those lines. I like to take storylines from when I first started to when I refound the love and others that I met along the way.
So a lot of cool little moments there. Were you always a storyteller? Were you always in marketing? Were you always did you have a camera in your hand at a young age too? Like when did those worlds kind of collide?
I never had a camera in my hand all the time. I knew from a creative perspective, I like to see things. I grew up just watching just random movies, right? I think as we were growing up, it was kind of play outside, watch movies. And then as I got older, I kind of found a camera. The story behind that is I used to be a caddy at a country club and I traded a pair of Jordans for a camera. And that's
Stop
when I
it.
started. Yeah, that's when that Jordan 11s. It was one of our guys in the caddy barn. He was getting rid of a camera, and I said, "Hey, I don't really have the funds, but I'll trade you some J's because I mean that's social currency these days, isn't it?"
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of where it started. I went out, I took a picture of the ocean. I think it was 11:30 at night, dark. It was in Pacifica. I look back at the photo now, and it was trash, but back then I thought it was the coolest thing. Um, and it wasn't until recently that about a couple of years ago that I figured based on life things that have been going on is how can I juxtapose the two things that I really have love for, one being creative in a certain element and playing golf.
Bro, so hold on a sec. I don't know if I even knew this as your buddy. Uh, you weren't always like a photographer, cinematographer. Were you in a different line of work entirely before this?
I was. So I think post high school, right? You either go to college or you get a job. I went and got a job, and I continue to work for a multitude of companies. The most recent one I had, I worked for a tech company and I used to run a contact center. So basically, the people who call in and say my stuff is broken, I ran a series of centers that kind of helped those people. It wasn't until I
Bro,
got a
hold on a sec.
chance to,
Wait, wait,
yeah, I
wait,
know,
wait,
right?
wait,
It's
wait,
totally
wait, wait,
different.
wait, 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 wait. Do you so you're not like traditionally formally trained in the art of cinematography, like you are self-taught with camera while you are working a different job that has nothing to do with creative content making at all.
True. Yeah. So I kind of moonlighted that between the job I was working to the job that I currently have. Actually, not even job, just the thing that I do now. And it's kind of similar with
Bro,
golf, right? Yeah. I
I love that.
didn't. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't start golf with any like formal lessons. I think at that time where you had YouTube, and back again to the guy named Tiger. Just how many times can you loop around a swing to watch and try to emulate as a visual person? I did end up taking lessons though, a few of them to kind of help the swing because you can't really be trash on the golf course, or at least as a competitive person, I didn't want to be. Um, yeah, and I think just between drive and wanting to do something that one others said you couldn't do or you weren't good enough to do was uh, part of the driving force. But I also just wanted to see if there was a lane that I could drive through that wasn't there.
Bro, I'm not that I wasn't in awe of you before, but if you look at your work, you're and you don't really know you like you're like, wow, this dude's been doing this for years and probably went to like USC film school and like is trained, and like I love to hear that wasn't the case, and that do you know how inspirational that is for other people that are probably like that have that mindset, including myself. Like it's so hard to get out of that culture level mindset that like because I know I've been taught to do A and I went to school for A and I'm proficient in A, I got to stick with A. I can't learn B or C or D. And bro, I think it's so amazing that you're just like, fuck it. I'm gonna go I'm gonna go learn this and embark on a journey where I'm just gonna figure it out. And I think that is it's incredible because if you look at it now, like, bro, it world class. Like in my opinion, at least, I'm sure some of the sticklers out there can nitpick things. We all can. And I don't care what kind of trade you're in. But bro, I tip my hat to you because I didn't know that, and I mean I know that I brought you in. I've got friends over at Wilson, and you that's how you met them, and you were on their tour shoot this year, and I was there watching you, bro, and it was magic watching you mic up these guys, set the stations up, light the stations, sit them down. I asked some of the questions, and you were just floating. And bro, you were like a magician with what you created. Because if you go to Wilson's page now, that's all your content pretty much from the tour shoot side. Not all of it, but a good chunk of it from our station. And I'm mesmerized knowing that you are self taught.
Yeah, I think back then it's team effort, right? And then it's also how bad do you want it? my dad always used to tell me the X amount of time will come whether it's going to be there or not. So what are you going to do with that X amount of time? For some, it's you go to school for a few years and then you try to figure out. My journey was a little bit different. I did it. It took probably a little bit longer to figure it out. Still trying to figure it out, but between the people that you meet along the way and the things you learn, I think that will hopefully one day becomes worth it, right?
Yeah, but let me ask this too, like, and I don't want to ruffle any feathers here, but like, you have a talent also. Like, did you always know this creative part of your brain, this talent side? Because I'm sorry, guys, like, there's things like I couldn't do as much as I may want to. I couldn't pick up a camera and do what you do. I couldn't take all the content, edit it down, splice it up, and create the storylines that you can. I think there's just raw talent there, or just untapped talent. When did you know you had that? When did you know that that was like, fuck, it's inside of me, and I need to get this out?
I think it's just perspective, right? I think that what's the saying that hard work beats out talent any day. I think it's just trying to understand what you're trying to tell. I think from my perspective is someone who was like a minority in golf, right? Trying to tell stories in a game where essentially some of the stories aren't being told. From a PGA Tour level, right? You see the stories of a Tiger and a Rory, and people who have always been in the limelight for
Mm-hmm.
X amount of time. But what about the other people that aren't in the limelight? What about the people that you play with at the local munis that had game, they end up having an injury and you've never heard of them, right? Like, how can we understand those perspectives of those people? And between the courses that I go out to either play or people that I meet, like, how can I reflect that sort of content in some sort of story that's visual? Um, not you can't get anyone on a phone at certain times. I think the internet's a great place where sometimes it only takes 7 seconds to tell a story. Sometimes you
Yeah.
need an hour. But what are the different avenues and kind of pieces that you can do to help elevate that? I think the camera is one thing, right? Understanding and learning how to use that, but we all have a phone, and that's much different from, I don't know, 20 years ago. So I think at the end of it is what is the thing you're trying to hit home, and hopefully that resonates to some people. But at the end of the day, as long as it resonates with yourself, I think that's probably the key goal, and kind of breaking through not only the noise of the internet, but also just the noise between the feedback within yourself.
Can we just pause and stay in this zone for a minute, and then we'll kind of get back to what golf means to and all that. But like, I think what you just said is important, and it's a really cool learning lesson, especially for myself. Because bro, I'll speak for what we're doing at Molly and what I'm doing, with some other clients that I have. There's so much noise. Like, there's just so much noise online. And I think one of the things I love about your page, what you're doing, the content you make, there's a level of authenticity, and like, I'm making this because I love it. I'm not making it for clickbaits. I'm not dubbing in, XYZ. I don't even want to give the people shout outs because I just don't like a lot of things in online world, but you're just authentic, bro. And like, what, and I'm sure, here's kind of the hard question, man. And I don't want to beat around the bush here for the sake of time. But like, I'm sure if you did things that are maybe a little bit less authentic, if you used more clickbait, if you used, I don't even want to go there, but maybe your page grows faster, maybe it goes viral quicker, but you don't do it. So like, can you talk on that? Like, is that on purpose? Is that, are you trying to maintain a level of this real authenticity for a reason, and where do you see it going and why?
Yeah, I think, well, part of it is yes, right? I think if you subject yourself to wanting to do a clickbait or show certain things or not show certain things, I think from a social identity perspective, like that's what people see. I think unfortunately, if you post something or if someone sees something on the internet, you get put into this bucket of this is what he or she does, this is what he or she posts, and that is what it is. Even if it might not be true, the between social identity, currency, and proof, like that is what it is. Between my approach, I think um, it depends on what game you play, right? So I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but there's kind of two theories between this. There's a finite game and then there's an infinite game. Like the finite game is, what are you creating? Is it for the bag? Is it because you want to post certain things? Is it to get the attention of others, right? And then once you reach that goal, like that's it, right? You consider yourself completing that game. And then on the infinite side, are you just creating it to create it, to tell stories, no matter where they land or who they attach? You're kind of just doing it for the continuous motions of doing it and being able to share what you'd like to share. And at the end of it, like hopefully you're proud of it. Like it's not the bag, it's not the clicks, it's not the views, it's not those sort of things. So I think trying to understand like what are you actually in it for? And we both have friends and families, right? Like there's people that you do need to support. So how do you balance and harmonize those two things to, one,
Hmm.
be
Hmm.
authentic, and two, essentially keep the lights on, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I mean, I had a conversation with a friend a couple days ago. 'Cause dude, I've been between friends and everyone listening. Like, I've been struggling, man, stressing out about just the right content, not just online, just like how to build Mully and our voice, because it's gotten lost a little bit, and I'll admit it. There are a lot of cooks in the kitchen right now. We're growing really fast, and I can go to tangent here, and I won't. But I was talking to a friend, and my friend was like, "Dude, you need to identify the game you're playing, and like once you know the game, you're not what culture wants you to do, not what your peers or other people like. What is the game you are playing? Either there's Mully or Michael. Like, what is that game, and what are those rules, and play by those. Because once you do that, so what you're saying is you lose a lot of that anxiety and stress, and you're able to execute much more efficiently. I don't know if you think the same.
I do, and I try to, right? Like, I can think between what you said, it's how many revisions and versions are you going to kind of go through before you think that part is right? And I think as a creative person, as I identify myself now, is that um, one, you're your own worst critic, and two, you may not even post something or share something that you feel is great one day that's not the next, right?
Yeah,
And so I think if you have certain principles and guiding lights that are very straightforward, as long as they really hit those buckets, I think you just hit the button. Um,
yeah,
yeah, prior to golf, like shooting other types of landscapes and sceneries and different lifestyle things, I think the thing that held me back, or from a creative standpoint, is looking at it through a computer screen and not knowing if it was good enough. So with golf, I treat it a bit differently, right? Because I think I feel a certain way about golf, and when I am in the moment and shoot something from a reactionary perspective, like that's how I felt at that moment. Like I can't change that shot, I can't change how I felt, I can't change where the ball went, or who was there. And then how can I just reflect that emotion? Because I think the more that we stare at it and look at it, we'll start to feel and see different things. Similar if you like read a book multiple times, right? You start
yeah,
gaining just different perspectives from it.
yeah. You just said you feel about golf a certain way. What do you feel about it?
Before I used to feel this passion of wanting to be really, really good. Uh,
Shut up, dude.
compet-
You are
yeah,
really good, man. At least your swing is
um,
good.
I'm decent. I'm decent. I can hold my own at sometimes, right? But yeah, I just want to be really good. I wanted to play competitively. I wanted to play in other places. There were certain dreams and aspects, and I think that kind of just was the guiding light, right? Like if you didn't shoot par, if you didn't go under, if you didn't make X amount of birdies, like it was just a horrible day. So you take all that time off and you come back to the game. Like the expectation wasn't to be that. The expectation was how and who can I meet on the course that shares this love for the game that I found again. Maybe they have a similar story. They found some sticks in the closet and they're like, hey, maybe I should start playing again, or maybe they got back from an injury, or maybe they're even new to the game, right? So, in a sense, that whole break, now I can see things from fresh eyes, and now wanting to express more of a creative voice in it, like the motivating factor is a bit different. I mean,
Hmm.
it's great to be on a golf course all day, but as we know from
Hmm.
an editing perspective, sometimes you can't do that. So you kind of try to make the most out of it.
Yeah, we'll touch on the editing side of things in a sec, but like what I also still want to get into the that moment, the moment, I don't know what you call it, but the moment you're like you had the courage to end one life, right?
Yep.
I don't know what you're doing, like, but like really give Ube, not Patrick. Patrick's the guy who worked that job. Ube's the creator of the golf that creates this magic, and brands want to hire him, and you have your own storytelling method. Like, when was the moment? And like, do you remember the first piece of content you posted? What got what like was there peer feedback? Like, what gave you enough courage to be like, all right, I'm all in, chips in the middle.
Yeah. So I think part of that decision was it was made for me. So I used to work for a company, and we just they decided to go different directions for whatever. Yeah, they just decided to go, and I think from that point there was the decision, right? Do you either A, get a job that you're super familiar with, you can execute, you could bring value, all that good stuff, or B, do you scratch the itch? Um, so we went the latter. Also, I have a really supportive wife and family who kind of allowed and helped me make that decision, and has been supported throughout the process. But I think that was kind of the key point in time of, oh, do I do this or I
Mm-hmm.
do this? And I think
Mm-hmm.
from that point, I just decided I'm all in. I thought at that point one decision was wrong. I thought I had the gusto to do it, or at least try to do it right. And I started trying to be more involved with the community, trying to understand what the community of golf in the area that I lived in, like what was it. So being a part of more events in the community, reaching out to different people, and just kind of just understanding what the landscape was. I used to be a person that just was the solo that pulled up to the course, right? You just kind of go onto the golf tee time app, and you look to see what single is available, and you go there and you're like, man, okay, well, I did or did not enjoy playing with this person.
Hmm.
And I think there's different community aspects that allow you to see different things, especially here in California. And no
Yeah.
matter where you're at, you kind of get the vibe of what's going on. So being able to marry the two things of what I wanted to do, and like, can you do it authentically, right? Like if I'm making certain content, or if I'm doing certain things for a community that like I don't vibe with or I don't understand, like it's going to come off not as authentic. um so just trying to understand and learn from that case, and I think I'm still trying to learn now. Like the landscape's ever changing, the people involved are ever changing, the brands are ever changing. But who and what can you align yourself to that at the end of the day you feel happy about, and you feel a certain parallel with, versus kind of others that you don't. And I've been very conscious about trying to make those decisions and alignments with people and friends.
I'm almost speechless, which happens very rarely, as you know. Smiling from my heart inside out. Do you be like you got to look at your journey in the last year. It's been about a year and a half, right, since you jump ship or made full like, and look at the brands you've worked with. Look at the some of the events. I mean, I just saw you with a friend of ours, also self taught, Channing Benjamin, at the LA Country Club at the U.S. Open. And guys, I'm going to somehow share this because you got to see it. Like, and you haven't seen it, you've probably seen it, but dude, you made a piece of content, and I'm just like, I just, no offense, I was like, was this like from a commercial, like NBC, like or CBS, like was it like? And you put together this little sizzle reel, and I was like, holy shit, this is great. So, dude, you got, I mean, two of you guys out there with a camera and floating around. You're it's just magic. I mean, I don't know have any other way to say it. Like there's, and it's people like you guys that take your creativity, take your eye through a lens, and it's I love how you're showcasing golf to this audience, this influx of new golfers. Um, and not that I think anything's wrong. Here's a mini tangent. Not that I think there's anything wrong with Zaire Golf or PJ Memes or the meme channels or like what is it, Bob Does Sports and those guys. Breezy Golf. That's one side of the game, and that's a very relatable side of the game. The going out with your buddies, maybe having a couple cocktails, a couple, and not being good, shanking the ball, fighting with your friend. Like I get there's a humorous side to the game, and I get that that's really relatable. But I also think it needs the yang. If that's the yin, you need the yang. Like you need your side, which is that emotional connection, the drive to be better, the inspiration from these athletes, and just the beautiful aspects of golf. And that's what I think your lens and what it does. And in the stories that you have, I remember you made that story for Wilson about the moonshot, and you get out of a range cart and just, bro, it's fucking incredible. And I just got to thank you. Like what you are doing for the game is necessary to balance out that equilibrium, to get to an equilibrium where golf isn't just this locker room slapstick humor type, sport.
Thanks. Yeah, it's both. Like I love those channels as well. Like you play around to golf with your buddies, you go to the range. Like I doubt you don't talk about those certain things that you see, or if you even partake in those activities. Right? I think that
Right.
is part of the
Right.
game. But like you said, it's not all of the game. And like which side of the fence do you want to be on either that day, or for whatever content you want to post or what you want to make. But I think it has to be part of the game because that's what it is. Now, albeit there's certain parts of those channels and story arcs that sometimes aren't, they're a little bit hyperbole, right? But I think when you kind of get down to the nuts and bolts of it, like, yeah, that's part of the game. Yeah, I went out with my buddies and we did certain things that wasn't right, but then we also had a really cool story to share because someone came back 3-2 and made a 30-footer on 18. Like
Yeah.
that is also part of the story.
I've also just been enamored with golf. I'm a big history guy. I love history. I love the tradition of the golf game of golf. Not again, not to because you're right. You opened up your side of it with like golf has been just an old rich man white sport, and I'm glad it's not that anymore. But there's some
No.
history to Tiger's legacy, and even Arnold Palmer, like some of the just the cool stories in golf that you touch on that I just think it's important for the growth of the game to still have that anchor somewhere in history so that you know where we came from, you know how much it's grown. That I think is cool that you do, and I'm just a big storytelling marketing kind of person, and I think how you do it, I can see why brands want to gobble you up and swallow your content and use it for their audience, because you're just so good at setting up those stories and so good at connecting with an audience and then showcasing kind of what the brand's about. I think you're a magician.
Thanks. Yeah, I think part of that is like, I mean, what you got to understand the audience to begin with, right? Like, if you were your audience, what would you see? And then does that extrapolate to what others see? Like, certain content that I make it won't work for certain brands, right? Like, maybe that's not part of their story, that's not part of their identity, brand, what they're trying to build, and that's fine. But from a brand perspective, like, what is that? Like, if you're trying to understand the demographic of people, and what you're trying to target, like, what is it? Are we looking for the funny, humor, hypey sort of piece, or are we looking for the thing that's between the lines where you have to watch a little bit to try to understand? And I think brands can toe between both of the lines, but just have to understand that one piece isn't the whole pie, right? They're slices. So does it is it beneficial for that slice to be in the pie, or is it not beneficial for the slice to be in the pie? Um, and that's kind of how, when I take off the hat of being the person who creates it and kind of put the brand hat on, like, does that piece fit, or does that aesthetically work for what we're trying to create?
Yeah. Well, I think you have carved out, and this is going to get to my next question of like, where's the future of content marketing? So I think, and this is me just spitballing, I think you've done a great job. Excuse me. I think you've done a phenomenal job of carving out your own segment within this world, which is content creator storyteller. You've got the guys like Good, you've got guys like Bob does sports, I don't know, Bob, whatever, like who are just entertainers, right? Good, bunch of like good golfers, but they've got a camera crew making their content. Bob does sports, and those kind of guys like just entertainers, like having fun with their. I mean, you're a golfer, you're a talented golfer, you're a cinematographer, you're a storyteller, and you're capturing it. You're doing everything, and you're making it. It's like I'm watching a good golfer play, but also telling a story. So it's a really unique hybrid of what I've seen. Like you've seen brands invest in good, you've seen brands invest in foreplay. That was this year, and that's a certain type of content. I guess here's the question: is how have are you even aware of the kind of the segment like of what you're doing? Was it on purpose? And where do you see the future of content marketing for golf going?
Yeah, I think it was by design. Like, it was, what is the story that I want to tell for certain product or brand that makes sense to that audience, right? I think and everything, like the simplistic form, like that's what it was. Is it authentic to me? Is it authentic to me? Is it authentic to them? And will it resonate? Not does it last 10 seconds? Is it going to get 100,000 views, and get shared multiple times? I think that's just the output of what you create from after you see it, right? I think if that's the goal of, like, back to the finite infinite game, like, right, if we're just looking for those things, like, there are other ways to do it, if you just want to get those eyeballs. But if you want to get the right eyeballs for the right people, then this is the way you should do it. And I think from a brand perspective, we need to lean more into that. I think we're pretty heavy in social media, and we've seen certain things on certain channels which are like, no way they did that, right? So not to highlight any other brands, or like, I didn't, like, there's no way in the world that you could have done that to hit a tee shot, or there's no way in the world that you put that on your brand page, knowing that hundreds of thousands of golfers, millions of golfers, like, golf, right? Like, that's just not an accurate thing to put. And if you're trying to paint a certain picture, like, that's not the image, and that's not the thing that you use.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think for brands, I think what we'll continue to see is leaning more into, or hopefully leaning more into, the creatives who are actually part of golf, right? Why would you not shoot a golf spot with people who golf? Like, that's sometimes astonishing when you look at things. You're like, there's no way in hell either A, that person's ever picked up a golf club before, or B, wants to know about the game, right? Like, do you get into a car with no license, having no idea, and just say, go ahead, get on the freeway, and we'll see you at the next exit? Like, there is a slim chance that that's not going to happen. I think we should do that with golf, right? As with any things, like that is the right thing to do. And there are plenty of people that love the game that want to tell the story, like myself included. Um, so why not give those folks a chance to do it, and be able to kind of execute what you're trying to execute?
Mm-hmm. And as far as the future of kind of some content, like I'm just bluntly going to say, like the lifespan of good or foreplay, it's really at the mercy of their fans, right? Like the second they get tired of watching those guys just keep playing golf, you're kind of just over it. So I don't know what your thoughts are on the lifespan of those that type of content, versus kind of like this the storytelling. But would love for you to just touch on that and being in the industry and being in that world.
Yeah. Biased opinion, but I lean upon the storytelling, right? Like, how many times have you seen a good golf shot that you can relate to? Probably hundreds of times. But how many times after you watch does that become, for the lack of a better word, stale, right? I would love to see Minwoo hit stingers all day long, but the interesting part of his story is that that man might win a major, right? Like, now that's just part of the story. Um, would Tiger be as successful if he didn't kill everyone at the mass? Kill, wrong word. Didn't just dis- disseminate
Murder
everyone. That
everybody.
yeah, yeah, like no, like yes, it was great. He was a super young phenom that followed through with expectations, right? And we were just eating popcorn, following along with the ride, right? And just continued to
Yeah,
get better and better and better
yeah,
and better. Um, don't get me wrong. There's something great about a great golf shot. Like I'll be on the course and I hit one. I'm like, wow, that felt amazing. But to a larger audience, like how many times you're going to see a 300, 400 yard drive and be like, yeah,
yeah.
that's transcending golf. In some cases, it does, right? I mean, Bryson hitting the ball as far as he does, we might have the ball rolling back. Actually, we do, but in certain instances, we don't. Like that transcends the game,
Yeah,
for better or for worse. Like it's done it, right? Steph Curry with
yeah.
basketball, that 3 pointer, the way that he has
Change the
been
game.
able to execute,
Change the whole
change the
game.
game, right? But that at the end of the day, it's not the 3 point shot. It's the effect of that. Like, what was the story? And I think as long as you're building community and being able to expand on the game, and bringing new eyes in a fresh way that people relate to, I think that it's just going to continue. At the point that you don't, and it's just becoming stagnant in the same thing where the storylines end up being the same, I think at that point, it becomes a bit of a conversation with whomever's involved of what
Yeah,
are we creating and what are we trying to do.
right.
Yeah, a bit long winded, but that's kind of the thought.
So, dude, you obviously work with some big names and big people, and they have budgets and they hire you. But what if you're someone out there, you got a brand new startup, whether it's a golf apparel or golf equipment or whatever it may be, right? What kind of advice would you give them in terms of building some content? Because I think we both agree on, and Sami, content is the key that unlocks marketing. Without content, you're really nothing to showcase your audience or your potential audience, right? So if we agree on that, what advice would you give someone that's just again starting out, doesn't have budget to maybe hire someone like you, but they know they need some content?
Yeah, I would just ask him, who is your community and what, like, who are they? Like, what, like, are you looking, is your audience 18 to 24 year olds that never played golf? Is it 40 to 60 year olds that are on the back end trying to play golf? Like, who are you trying to create content for? And I think once you answer that, like, you don't need much these days. I mean, technology is insane. There's free apps and programs, and most of us have a cell phone.
Yeah,
Um, and I think, like, what are you trying to do? I think the technology piece is an easy solve, right? Like, you have a phone. Like, could I have shot in the stuff that I've shot and tell the stories with phone? Absolutely. Would it have the same impact? Possibly, right? Depending on who was viewing it, if it was a brand or if it was just someone else, right? Depends on which lens you're trying to approach and see it from. um, but yeah, we have the cell phone these days does video. We have pieces that take great audio, and even the tools that I use today, I think they're just tools. They don't tell the story.
yeah,
um, I think it's funny, right? Because if you go play golf, right, and then someone sees you play golf, they're like, oh wow, you have some great clubs. That's cool. They don't really swing themselves, but thank you very much. And I think it's the same way
right,
from a creative side, right? Like, you have a cool camera, cool, but it doesn't hit the button itself. Like, it doesn't do the storyboard, doesn't do the storyline, it doesn't take in all the editing stuff. Like, it doesn't do all that. And I think when you hear that or when you see that, like I think we start taking away the value of what people are creating because those are just the tools that help you create it. It's not the actual thing that's creating it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's good advice. And then I saw you post something also the other day like AI. I know a lot of
Yeah.
golf manufacturers are using AI. Wilson uses it, Callaway uses it. I think a lot of people use it now. A lot of OEMs use it. Where does AI fit in marketing content? Have you
I
used
think
it?
it's
Have
part,
you been using it?
I think it's just part of the tools, right? I think from a technology like standpoint, it makes clubs better. It can make clubs better. So for performance wise, for people that play golf, like why wouldn't you lean into it and use it? From a creative perspective, it is a tool to help you gain different visions and different like the way to see different things, right? I think the thing that we're talking about is that quick shutter, multiple environments, being able to create these kind of dystopian type of views, which are very, very interesting. When like I first saw it, and I still see it now. Like, and then how do we weave that into the game of golf, or even to the pieces that we have? I think there's a place for it, but I think for myself, I'm trying to understand it as well. I think it's really cool, and in future work or in current work, I'd kind of love to find a way that makes sense. I think part of that leading question is that does it take away from the creative or does it take away from certain uh, jobs or things like that? I think in some cases, yes and no. I think that's part of a different conversation, but as a platform and as a piece that creatives and non-creatives use, I think there's definitely a place for it that can potentially make the things that we do and um, how we create things a little better.
Yeah. I know when I make content, sometimes I draw inspiration from a lot of other non-golf companies. I've gotten like my favorites that I look at. I'm just curious, like I don't know someone of your level and your caliber. Is your inspiration being drawn from your own mind? Excuse me, or do you have other people that inspire you, other brands, other creators that are inspiring you?
Absolutely. So there's creators in the space that have been part of the game longer than I have, that have been creating in the game longer than I have, that inspire me, right? You see certain videos, you talk to them, you have conversations, and the things they do, you one never thought of, or two, you just trying to get in their mindset, right? So I know we mentioned Channing earlier. I had the chance to go to one of his golfography experiences, and basically you get a whole group of creatives that are in one room for a set of days, and you just understand like what their creative approach is and how they see different things, right? We're all biased to what our own opinions are, so to be open to hearing others, like that's great. And then even from the community side, like we mentioned Malbon, there's students golf, and based on their events and their community buildings that they have, um, how do people see it? And then from my perspective, aside from being influenced and being inspired by those folks, is uh, sometimes I don't even look at golf things or watch golf things to be inspired, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes I watch a movie.
Yeah.
There's a set of movies that I watch when I feel a certain way, and I'm like, you know what, I just don't have it today. I don't know what I'm doing. Like this edit or this picture just doesn't make any sense to me. So there's like a roster of like movies like Ready Player One or like Pursuit of Happiness that I'll watch, or music, right? We'll throw on some Kendrick, some J. Cole, some old school Kanye. Hopefully he's not still canceled. Not sure. But like their perspectives and the way that they create through their art form are inspiring, and it's still part of golf, right? You play, you probably put a speaker on and you listen to some one of those, right? You've gone to the movies. Just because they're not hitting a golf ball doesn't mean it's not golf related. It's just part of the lifestyle that we have and are trying to kind of live. And golf's just kind of secondary and a medium for all these things.
You bring up a really good point, bro. I'm going to try and ask this in a question for everyone to benefit from, but I've struggled with. I mentioned I struggled earlier in the interview in the podcast that like sometimes I just don't have it. Sometimes the demand of social, the demand of we've got what 30,000 users now, and like we're trying to make everybody happy, and we're a small team at Mully. There's like probably 6 or 7 of us now. I'm pretty much the marketing side. Those guys are all in like the project management, the tech side, operations. But like when you're flying and doing marketing, and I do the customer service with my buddy Ryan. Um, Thank God for Ryan. But it's just hard, man. Like, cause you get, and I don't care how many good things you may hear, like Mully's great and like love the this and the, but like this shit sucks. Like maybe some guy who just doesn't know how to use technology. It's like fuck, man. Like that sometimes the negative feedback and some of the frustration I get, and then I gotta get into marketing mode, and I gotta be able to work with our team and what are we gonna post this week, or what's our messaging. Anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying like sometimes you just don't have it. Sometimes I don't have it. Sometimes I don't want to post anything. I'm just like, dude, isn't posting nothing better than something that's just crap? And it's like, it's just in today's world, excuse me, in today's world of just the ever flowing content stream that is Instagram, that is Threads, that's Twitter, that's YouTube. There's just so much content being produced at such a rapid rate. Is that the game we're in? And that's one question. Is the game just content, 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 less emphasis like on quality and more emphasis on frequency? That's question one. Question two is how fast does this world adapt? Looking at Channing, right? Your style and Channing's style, very, very different creators. But Channing, who is proficient in like in landscape photography and what he's done, he's had to learn how to market himself on social now with reels and like adapting his style. He couldn't just post landscape photos anymore. That wasn't gonna cut it anymore. So in the pace that these social media channels are evolving, like are we just at the mercy of having to learn constantly on how to adapt our styles to fit that? Does that make sense in those questions?
Yeah. So I'll answer the first one just because, or the last question you asked since it's fresh. I'd have to have to repeat the first one. Um, but yeah, I think we have to adapt. Unfortunately, right? Like Instagram was a place where you just post pictures, and albeit like it probably should be a place where we still could post pictures, right? I would love just to be able to post photos because I think in the most organic way and from the first thing that I love, like that was a photo, right? It wasn't a video. It was a still motion. We stopped
Yeah,
time. We
dog.
captured some. We
Yeah,
captured something, and that is what it is.
yeah.
Um, so Instagram, if you're listening, like just bring back some photos. That'd be nice.
I'm not sure if
Um,
Instagram listens to Love and Golf podcast, but we can. I'll send it to him. Fuck it.
I don't know. Maybe we go golf. Um, but yeah, I think we have to adapt. I think from an art form, like I think it ended up being good for those. Like it really pissed off some people, right? Like they just didn't want to do it, um, or just that wasn't their thing. And we totally respect that. But I think from a content side, if we're putting on a brand lens, right, I think you have to adapt. Like from a brand perspective, you have to adapt. From a personal lens, like, you don't
Because
have
we're
to.
catering to the audience, which is the users. We're not actually. It's less about because, and this is the algorithm too. Like it's less about what we want to make now. It's like what are we going to make that people want to see? Because if you're not getting stuck in the first minute you post something, if you're not stuck in that zone, you're dropping. No one's seeing it.
That's true. But then we kind of go back and like, who is your audience? Like, is your audience going to stick around for 3 seconds? I think I had a conversation really early on in this journey where I got asked, like, what would you change about social media? And I think the answer that time is I said, I wish people had longer attention spans past 2 seconds.
Right.
And then I went home
Yeah.
and I was like, at that time, that was the answer. But I think I fast forward a few months later, and I was like, well, why don't I just make better content for the people that are watching? And that felt okay. That felt right with me, right? Like I think for the audience that I have currently, albeit small, supportive, and kind of always in there with being with engagement, like I'm understanding, like if you're watching it, like you'll probably stick around for more than 3 seconds.
Yeah. That's my
And
issue
if
with
you,
social media, though, dude. Like, I'm sorry, this is just like I've always had this issue. Like, people don't realize that we as creators we're not being rewarded for long form good content because they don't monetize off that. They need you to keep scrolling so they have their advertising breaks. They need like that's the whole platform and systems are set up so that you can keep moving around. So you're interrupted by sponsorships and advertisements and people that are on meta, business and like paying thousands of dollars a month to get in front of your face. So it's a weird catch 22. And then the addiction of it is because of the dopamine hits. And I can go on a tangent on this, dude. We're not going on a tangent, but like, yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
I guess okay, so between those two, we could close it out. I think there are creators and audiences that like that algorithm doesn't affect as much, right? And I think they built enough of community and understanding within that community that it works,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
two ones that I look at is Mr. Beast, right? You'll watch an hour Mr. Beast video, regardless of what it is, whether he's giving something away or he's not giving something away, like you know that he's going to do something that's entertaining to you, provide some value, and that's what it is. And then two others, MKBHD, right? Like you watch hundreds of tech videos, but I'll sit down for a 30-minute tech video of him telling me about an iPhone that I've already researched on WSJ and all those things.
Right.
And then a more recent creator is Kai Sanat. So Twitch streamer, millions of users, streams all day, and just has a really has an audience that's just like super engaging on what he talks about. He's essentially just in front of the camera and he just talks and is just real about it.
Wow. What a
So
different world,
like
man.
you
I think this is where,
unicorn examples, but I mean, I think it's there, and I think hopefully that's the direction we're moving in, versus you know the opposite into the
I hope
spectrum.
so. So
Where
that answers the second, my original question, the first one, which was frequency over quality, quantity over quality. Like, well, how do you feel about that? Like, is it important for a brand if you're starting out? Like, again, let's remove students, let's remove Malbon, let's remove Wilson, let's remove these guys, right? Even remove Mully. If you're literally a new brand coming out, and you've got 1,000 followers, maybe 500, you're building your
yeah,
base. What's the importance of frequency versus quality?
um, I mean,
Or are you
perfect world.
fucking
Try to
handcuffed to both?
I mean, you try to bridge both, right? I mean, you try to bridge both. That's the cop out answer, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think I would lean on the quality aspect unless there's a clear decision of you wanting to post something because of consistency, right? So let me explain that. So like if you like we'll kind of go back. You talked about the U.S. Open video, right? So during that week between the U.S. Open, there was an event, and there were events in Los Angeles that led up to the Open, right? So being local, was able to attend kind of the Open, and attend in multiple events during that week, right? In that instance, I thought consistency was the answer. Like I prioritized that over the quality of them. Now, was the goal to mesh them together? Absolutely. But I was less concerned from a creative aspect of like, is this perfect versus is this done? And the reason why I say done is that week, that little pocket of time was that's never going to happen
Mm-hmm.
again, or I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if it's ever going to happen again, right?
Got it. Maybe
So
new
how
that
can I
time. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So how can I share those experiences for those that are watching that either A, were involved, B, were not involved, or C, someone who's watching from the outside, be like, oh, that's cool. Maybe I should do that for brand or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Now that the little hype reel that you saw, I think it was the Wyndham win, right? I spent more time on that than I probably did on the other ones. One, it was a very
That was
iconic moment.
incredible, bro. That was incredible. Incredible. And how you got those shots and those angles, like, I'm like, oh my God, you're like looking inside Wyndham's nostril. I'm like, what the fuck?
uh yeah, like I spent more time on that. Like it was like I felt it was right. So there was two times that I had pieces of content where I felt like I needed just to spend extra time on it. One, the Wyndham moment. They all happened in the same week. So the Wyndham moment, right, when he won, and I think it was the day before, the Blocky moment where he played with Rory and made it ace. Like you don't get another shot to create either of those two. Like it is, people are gonna play it, they're gonna redo all the stuff, right? Between networks and everything, like everyone's gonna have their own spin on it. But I don't get a second chance to post that. I don't get a second chance to create it, ask the questions, be there, right? I just don't know. So how, like, those are decisions you just kind of make in real time. Um, yeah, and the way I say it real time is let me back up a little bit. So someone asked me one time, is like, how do you create your content, right? Like, do you
Yeah. Yeah.
storyboard
Yeah. Yeah.
everything? Do
Yeah.
you do all that stuff? And my answer was, I don't. Like, for most of the stuff, unless it's required, I don't storyboard a lot of things. And the reason why I do that is I take the approach for golf, right? So you show up to the golf course, you want to shoot a great score, right? But you can't plan to make birdie on hole 3, 4, 5 and make bogey somewhere else, right? And post a 68, 72, 85, whatever your goal is, right? Like you don't plan that. So from a creative from a creative side, like how can I just be more reactionary to the certain shots, right? Like the
Wow,
Wyndham
bro.
stuff,
That's
I wasn't there to, I didn't know where I was going because just
yeah,
things were happening. For the Blocky
yeah,
video, I didn't know if anyone actually wanted to talk to me at Arroyo, um, but because of those who supported him and who he was, like they were open to talking. I
wow,
kind of knew like I wanted to show up and shoot something, but I didn't know exactly like what I was going to get, what people were going to say, and I think that's kind of the beauty of it all. Like you give
yeah,
someone
dude.
a chance to like say something on camera for something else, um, or shoot something through a lens. Like you just kind of don't know what they create, and hopefully, just people kind of continue to do that.
Dude, again, just a little bit speechless when I've learned all this story, the backstory to your story. We're coming up on the hour, so I want to wrap soon because we're gonna.
Yeah,
I have a feeling we're gonna have to do another episode of this because I'm also like I've had a couple people on that are either founders of businesses or creating their own channel, whatever. Excuse me. And it's like I'm just fascinated by other entrepreneurs and other creators building things in this space. And I want to keep in touch with you guys. I know you were buddies, but we'll keep in touch with. I want to share the progress and how you're doing. Like I want to share this with everybody because I think it's fascinating. So we'll definitely have you back on. But I want to just again as a recap, like, dude, a golf nut, golf lover because of like me, Tiger, that whole era coming up, just making golf, look at it, golf through a different perspective and a different lens, the same as me. Um, Fell in love with the game, maybe took some time off from the game, found it again, pre-pandemic, right around that time. Great timing, by the way. Um, have a love and passion for creating using cameras, and then finally married those two, not taught, no university, no mentor, just self-taught out of the gate, coming out, just making content for the pure love of making content. um, and look at where you've gone, look at the people you've worked with, and look at how much it validates where you're going. So I say all that to say, last question, then what I promise we'll wrap. What is next for Ube? Like, what is next for you? Where, if you had to like look into a crystal ball and in like maybe 2, 3, 4 years from now, bro, like what are you doing? What, like, just take us through that. Take me through that.
yeah. I think it goes back to like that interview question, right? Like if you have a job, someone sits across from you, kind of like this, and they're like, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?"
Fuck you.
Yeah, right. And honestly, I hope to be one kind of doing the same thing I am doing, hopefully at a larger scale, right? Um, like that means my family has grown in 5 years, like wife, kids. Maybe we're at a different place, so like a better place, in terms of like how this thing that I'm able to create affects other people. Um,
Yeah.
it's funny when I say that. So like in some of the videos that I create, my son will come in, and he'll kind of look at like what I'm doing, and then he'll see golf, and then he'll say like "dad," right? So I think in that moment, like that's really cool to me. So in 5 years, does he see the things? Does he see those things the same way? Does he see dad who plays golf that makes these things on a computer look cool, right? I think then that's what it is for me. Like, uh, are we still doing the same things for the the right reasons? Are we still supporting the people that have supported us from day one? Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we get the bag? Hopefully, because that would be great. But is it done again? Is it done in an authentic way that makes sense? That when it happens, or if it doesn't happen, you just did it the right way. Like you get one shot at all this. Like you can't go back. Between social currency, identity, and proof, like were you the same from the first time you started till that 5 years, or till that next spot? Um, yeah, and hopefully when we chat or play golf at that time, like I can give you the same answer, and it's a yes. And yeah, hopefully golf's also in a really good place at that time, and also hopefully we're still playing golf at that time. Because we're getting older, mostly you.
Bro, I couldn't think of a better note to leave this on. I I mean this. You inspire me, man. I think your creativity, your love for the game, your creation, your magic. It's inspirational. I wish I could do half of that, but I'm just blessed to call you friend, and hopefully we can keep merging our talents under umbrellas and utilizing each other because I know God Mully needs your creativity. So I just thank you for taking the time, bro. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your vision for content and where it's going and your life. And I just appreciate it and thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
I'll talk to you soon, brother. Thank you.
All right, bye.